Over the last 3 weeks, we shared the events after the devastating fire that destroyed our beautiful Leopard 50 catamaran. This week, we discussed the choices we all have for the ideal cruising yacht and the steps you can take to get the best boat for you. Hello guys, this is Ellie and
Dr. John, obviously.
welcome to week 3 of the aftermath of our beautiful Leopard 50 burning and sinking.
Yeah, look, and again, I'd just like to thank everybody for all the support that you've given us over this difficult time for us. It's been absolutely wonderful from everybody, and we are very grateful for that. All the words of support and encouragement and faith in us.
So this video is all about us going forward. What are we going to do? What choices do we have? What options do we have if we're going to buy another boat? What are they?
So future episodes, we're going to get experts in to give you more direct help around maritime insurance and fire prevention on board our boats. Okay guys, we would like you to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button and ding the dong so you get notified whenever we put something out. So let's get into it. So we need to decide what are we going to do, and the most obvious question is, well, what boat are you going to get? But we really need to actually take a little step back before that to say, do we actually want to get a boat? Because this...
Boom, 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 boom. Right now, all things considered, do you want another boat?
So the simple answer and quick answer is relatively simple for me, because I have loved boating all my life. I've been sailing since I was 12. I built the 42-foot performance catamaran with dagger boards, and sailing has always been part of my life. I love it. It has always been my dream to be cruising the world, sailing to fantastic anchorages. So yes, I do want a boat. Not quite the same for you though, so tell us about your dreams, honey.
Well, if you've seen the first video 30 was the initial video of what we shared about the fire. My reaction was, I hate boats. I'm never getting another boat again. Even though I know from my professional experience that that is a normal reaction. I've had to sit with it for a few weeks and think, well, how do I really feel about it? And at the end of the day, in my heart, I still love boats. I still want to sail.
You love part of the boat. Tell us what the cons are for sailing for you, honey. Because this is really important for anybody who's looking to go sailing. This is a really important thing. It's not all perfect beaches and wonderful anchorages, etc., etc.
Yeah, well, it comes with an element of risk. And with that risk, there's a feeling of vulnerability. And, there's stuff that you just don't have control over. The weather, for instance. Then you have things that happen, like fires or groundings or lightning or those kind of squalls, things like that you don't have control over. So there's always an element of vulnerability when you're sailing.
You've been sailing 20 years now. So what is the most stressful part of the sailing from your perspective?
I think storms. That's it for me, because you never really know how bad the storm's going to get, and it's that unpredictability that makes me feel vulnerable.
And when you talk about storms, you talk about while you're sailing in the storms or anchoring?
No, well, I think it's mainly while you're sailing in the storms. The seas get big, but you don't know how bad it's going to get. There's all sorts of things you can do, but after that, it's in the lap of the gods. So that's probably the thing that makes me feel the most vulnerable. Storms, massive winds, and being in the middle of the ocean and something happening demasking.
And I mean, that's interesting because from my perspective, I'm actually much less worried when we're out in the middle of an ocean in big storms. I think the boat's designed for that weather. It's just the humans are much frailer than the boats in most instances. You need to prepare yourself mentally and practically in the boat for these different eventualities. The worst thing about lightning is it's random. So you cannot do anything apart from trying to avoid those storms. So to me, lightning is the thing you have least control over. Talk about the woo-woo wind. We have this expression on the boat, the woo-woo wind.
It's a trigger from past experiences. Once the wind gets up to a certain level and it starts to go, woo.
Through all the rigging and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, in big storms, the noise is immense.
It's
you have rattling of everything.
So loud. You can hardly hear what the other person is saying, you know. And if it's really important stuff that you need to hear, you can't hear because the wind's going, woo.
Oh yeah, and wave noise and wind noise and anchor noise and creaking noises from the boat.
Every sailor out there is going to have their biggest fear, or the thing that kind of rattles their cage a little bit, you know.
While you're out living on a boat, cruising in normal cruising areas, how many days a week or how many days a month would you say are unpleasant?
I would say on average probably 1, maybe 2 days a week. One probably is unpleasant. The second one's probably
just a bit windy.
Yeah.
I mean, 1 day a week certainly is the maximum that would be actually unpleasant, that would be having to take care. The other day might just be a 20-25 knot. That's not very nice, but it's not a worry.
Yeah.
And you know, you stay inside or raining or whatever.
Yeah.
The other thing is, over the 20 years, in terms of bad experiences, we've probably had 3 or 4.
So when I'm weighing up the pros and cons, and when I'm thinking, well, how do I really feel about do you want to go sailing? Do I really want to go sailing again? The answer to your question was yes. It's absolutely worth. I want to sail again. I want to get another boat, and I know I'm not 100% there yet, so I'm still going through that process, as probably you are. But deep in my heart, I know I want another boat again.
And I think the other thing that's important to point out is the bad experiences tend to become magnified into these huge issues that overwhelm all the good days. It's really important that you keep perspective, I think. The biggest problem with sailing is that the terrible is really terrible and the good is really, really good. So you've got to understand, you go through these big highs and these big lows. And then the next day you have beautiful weather and you think, after a storm, it does make you really appreciate how wonderful the sunrise is and the beautiful blue water and the nice gentle wind.
I'm sure a lot of sailors out there can relate to what we're saying. You know what we're talking about.
And if you want the really good stuff, you really have to go through the bad stuff. And as Elizabeth says, you don't have control over it.
So we've established that we both want to sail. We both want to get another boat.
A bit more hesitancy than me.
Yeah, me a little bit more hesitant. But John is the sailor. I came into his life and he had already built a 42-foot catamaran, taken 3 odd years to build it. And one of the first things he taught me was when I was looking around at this magnificent vessel that he had built with his own hands, I was saying, well, how come you haven't got this, or why does it do that, and things like that, and trying to learn everything. And he said to me a very wise thing, which I've taken on board from day one, which with boats, there's always a compromise. You know, you have to decide what sort of boat you want, which will lead into our next topic.
Yeah.
So what sort of boat do we want?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously that catamaran I built when I was obviously 20 years younger, and the reason I was building it is because I wanted a boat that was about that size, but I couldn't afford to buy one that's already made. Any boat is a compromise. So first of all, you compromise because of the money that you have. My first keel boat was a 23-foot monohull in Scotland because that's all I could afford. And then I expanded to about a 27-foot monohull, which we sailed around Scotland and I cruised through the Med. But again, it's the compromise there was money, because at that stage I wanted a catamaran because they perform better.
Ooh. That's another discussion.
They perform better. Anyway, once I had the ability to make a few more choices in terms of the sort of boat that I wanted, the performance catamaran that I built was a Pescott 42, which weighs about 6 tons and sails
like the wind.
Like the wind. Like we could easily do 15 knots comfortably, and if we pushed it, we would do 20 knots. So with
a bit bumpily.
But yeah, I mean, then you learn that doing those speeds is great fun when you're young and enthusiastic and got lots of energy and a few people on board that know how to sail, and if you want that sort of excitement. But equally on that sort of boat, when you're at anchor, you know, it's a light boat, so it sits and every little wave it goes by and goes. When we were on the Leopard at night time,
I forgot I was on the water.
It was like, unless there's significant waves, you sit there and you feel like you're on land. And when you're sailing on Alberdash, beautiful boat to sail, absolutely fantastic.
Your 42 foot.
The 42 foot performance cat, it was going so fast that we had to slow the boat down so the people downstairs could sleep, because when you're going at basically 12 knots, we found was about the comfortable speed. Over 12 knots, you're going over waves going. It's like this, you know. The other thing that you do at speed in those performance cats is you can take, if you're going upwind, you take off over one wave, and as you're coming down, you go down through the next wave. And we had green water coming up all the way over the cabin top and drenching us in the cockpit. So we'd be steering, looking out over the top of the cockpit, but we'd have to duck. And this wave would, you know, and if you're in 20 to 25 knots going upwind, you are going to be wet.
Yeah.
And same as Le Vagabond, they are wet when they're sailing in big winds, you know.
Yeah, it's how you are when it's a compromise with a performance boat, really.
What do you want? Do you want to go fast and be wet, or do you want to go slower and be dry? Well, if I'm doing a big ocean crossing and it's just the two of us, or maybe the two of us and another one or two people, I want to be dry, because I've been out in gales, 60 knot gales in Alberdash, and I wanted to be out of the wind and out of the whipping rain, and the water's hitting your face. It's actually painful. So after doing that for the 18 years that we had that boat, what we want is we want complete shelter, we want sunshade, we want wind and rain protection. So when we're working the sheets and working the winches, we have that protection.
Yeah, one of our friends said, oh, you're going soft, you know. And I guess it's a case, no, we're not going soft, we're just going more comfortable.
It's not about being a wussy baby. And let's talk about air conditioning. Talking about wussy babies.
Yeah, we've been in temperatures that you could fry an egg on the deck, you know.
Yeah. When I built the 42 foot, my view at that stage, air conditioners, you don't need air conditioners on a boat. So when you're sailing in the tropics, and you see this on many YouTube channels, people get so unbearably hot and they just wish they had air conditioning.
And you have to get off the boat. It's intolerable.
Yeah.
And we've also had that in France.
Yeah, and there was one crossing that I did from Bali back to Darwin, which is about 300 miles, but there was no wind. It was the early part of the summer, so the temperatures were, you know, mid to high 30s. The humidity was 100%. It was just standing still in the shade, you were just dripping sweat. In this crossing, it was so hot and there was so little wind, we were actually getting buckets of water, throwing it over the deck to try to keep the decks cool. I kept out of the sun, but you were still dripping with sweat. When we were lying in our cabins, even with fans on, we were just dripping again. It was just awful. By the time I got to the end of that trip, which was about 6 days, because of the lack of wind, I had
alligator skin.
Alligator skin, worse than that.
With lumps and redness.
I had heat rash and sores. They took about 2 weeks to heal, didn't they?
How impressive.
And so after that trip, I had absolute conviction that there are times when absolutely you do need air conditioning. Obviously, you can't have air conditioning on certain boats, because if it's not a big enough boat to have a generator, it's a personal choice. Guys, all of these things are a personal choice.
There's a wise saying that says, a wise person changes his mind, a fool never does.
Yeah. So we have a blank canvas. We can choose now whatever boat we want, given the experiences we've had over the 40 years of sailing with monohulls, catamarans in the past, and obviously Leopards for the past year.
But for us right now, we know we want a cat. We know we want a cat again. We know we want comfort, although we really miss on Alberdash, the 42-foot cat that you built. We really miss the lifting dagger boards.
Yeah. So the one thing that I did seriously miss with the Leopard 50 was the fact that on the 42-footer, we could lift up the dagger boards and get into 1.5 to 2 feet of water. So we could beach the boat and I could step off and the water was just above my knees. That gives you a lot more freedom if you are trying to find an anchorage in a protected place. You can nip into very shallow water and you can beach the boat. Beaching the boat is a really nice thing to be able to do, because if you're in a storm, you can actually put the boat up high up on the water line, on the tide line, and have the boat sitting on the sand for 9 of the 12 hours if you want to.
I really miss that. It's what was one of my favorite things I loved about the cat that you built.
Yeah.
But again, it's a compromise, because with Alberdash, it was so light that you really couldn't load the boat up. That's a compromise.
Okay, the things that we loved about the Leopard were the front cockpit and the fly bridge. You know, it's interesting that, you know, we see other people who've never had a front cockpit and they say, oh, it's so ho-humish. It's actually really, really good, because when you're sitting in a hot environment with the trade winds blowing and you are anchored with the setting sun behind you, which is the way it always is, sitting in the front cockpit is just perfect, because you're getting the breeze, the gentle breeze on your face, you're cool, you're nice and cool, you're in the shade. If you're in the back cockpit, there's no wind, but you have to have all the drop downs down because that's where the sun is. So we love the front cockpit and we love the fly bridge, because at night especially, or on passages with hats, you can sit up there with a boat on autopilot and it is absolutely marvelous.
It's magic.
Yeah. Seawind produces really fantastic boats, and the Seawind produce a 16-meter boat which does have dagger boards. So we were seriously looking at a Seawind. So the Seawind has better performance, it's lighter than the Leopards for sure. It has dagger boards, so you can take it up into shallow water, which is that one thing that I missed.
That we really missed.
So we were seriously looking at Seawinds.
Well, again, we didn't have our lovely cockpit at the front. We didn't have the top deck, and also the steering station for us wasn't as well protected or out of the weather as much as what we would have liked.
The big down is, as Elizabeth said, doesn't have a front cockpit, so you're going to you're trapped to use the aft cockpit as your socializing area. But the weather exposure on the Seawind is still, you have to actually go out into the weather to work the winch, because it's outside there. In the Leopard, everything is inside your steering station, which we had completely protected from wind and rain. So you are never outside on a Leopard, whereas you are with a Seawind. The other good thing about the Seawind, which I love, steering wheels on both sides, because then if you're going into marina, you can always be close to the side you can't see. Oh yeah, so Seawinds are fantastic boats. They perform well.
They're built well.
And again, this is all about what do you want? Do you want to sail faster? And I mean, for us, as I said, the dagger board. I would have loved a dagger board.
I mean, Seawind nearly got us over the line.
Yeah. I mean, the other boats that have been brought to our attention, so thank you very much to everybody who's been watching. People have mentioned the Garcia Explo Cat 52, which is an aluminium boat, and obviously because we just had the fire, people said, well, you know, this is a really good boat to look at. This is about a 15-ton boat, as opposed to the Leopard 50, which was a 20-ton boat. The draft was about the same, but this is made all of aluminium, and the bottom of the aluminium hull is 15 millimeters thick, so really thick, solid metal. So you can beach this, but because it's so solid, it can hit icebergs and survive, and you can run into reef and you're likely to survive. It certainly can take
Your
a pounding.
chances are better
Yeah.
surviving. The other thing is that this model actually also has a sort of a front cockpit. It doesn't have shade like the Leopard, which is what we really love, but it has a front cockpit. Right?
Yeah, it has a front cockpit where you're handling a lot of the halyard, slightly more exposed. It doesn't have the shade, but a fantastic design boat. The downsides to this is obviously it's going to take a long time to build. Like they've only made about 4 of them so far, I believe.
Yeah.
So the performance of these boats is good, but it is significantly more expensive, and there is a 2-year wait at least to get one of these. And the other thing about, even though it's an aluminium boat, so the aluminium hulls will not burn, everything on the inside of it will still burn. So while there's the apparent protection against fire, all of the insides would burn because there's really thick insulation on the inside of the hulls, and almost certainly that insulation with fire will go up too, just like any other plastic boat. More exposed at the front to working didn't really suit what we're looking for. We're still looking for a comfortable boat for us to live on, and we're not wanting to push boundaries. We're not wanting to sail into the
have to go fast.
extreme parts of the world, and we don't have to go fast. The other boat that was mentioned or was recommended to us was the Windella, which is made of basalt, and again, great boat. It performs really well too. It seems like it's really light. It makes good speeds to windward and obviously downwind as well, and it's made of basalt, so it doesn't burn. The mast is made of basalt, so it doesn't conduct electricity. All the sheet handling is done in the front cockpit, but again, there's production time. I mean, the other option obviously is trimarans, which go even faster and are higher performance, but again, you have the same problem as the performance cats. You have to be very careful with the weight carrying capacity, and they are significantly less space on board for living. You know, again, everything's a compromise.
Yeah.
If we were 20 years younger, that may well be something we would be considering.
Yeah.
The cost is about the same, I believe, as the production boats anyway, so there's not a huge difference in price, I don't believe.
And you know, there's the argument, well, if you've got a trimaran, it goes fast. If there is a storm, you can get out of the way. I guess it depends on what sort of sailing that you're going to be doing.
Yeah. We've had enough adrenaline in our lives, so
Yeah.
now we're wanting to reduce the adrenaline
We
flow.
want chill.
So yeah, these are decisions which you need to make, and it's all a compromise. It always comes back to this compromise as to what you want and what you're happy to lose. So we're losing speed. With the Leopard, we're losing the dagger boards. That's probably the one thing that I miss.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But we still are drawn to go back to a Leopard.
Leopard ticks the most amount of boxes that we have. So we'd really like to go with another Leopard, but the problem we have is that we don't want to have to wait 2 years for production. We've already done that, and you know, the time's ticking for us. We don't want to be waiting another 2 years until we can get back out on the water.
So, guys, in summary, at the end of the day, when you buy a boat, it has to suit you. What you have to understand is that it is always a compromise, and it is always your personal choice and your personal preference. What do you want? How do you want to live? It's interesting when people that have not experienced certain boats pass judgment about it being good or bad, because at the end of the day, everything is a compromise. So you might choose to buy a monohull because you're going into the roaring 40s and the 50s, which is even worse. You buy a performance catamaran or a performance trimaran if you want to go fast and have that adrenaline rush, but you then can't carry as much stuff, and you have to be actively sailing a lot more of the time. The features that we want are because we want those features, and because of the experiences we've had over the 40 years of sailing I've had and the 20 years of sailing Elizabeth's had. And we're making these choices for those reasons. Nobody can say that those choices are right or wrong in general, because it's a personal choice. So my advice to anybody looking for a boat, go out and sail it yourself. Either charter it or hitch a ride as crew. Do delivery trips for people that need assistance so you can see what it's like to sail on the boat. The more experience you can get will make your decision much better and much more informed, because you will have that practical experience of what it's actually like.
So what about those people that would really love to go sailing? I mean, what advice would you give them?
So you have a local sailing club in the area that you live, go and join a yacht club, because usually racing boats have people looking for crew, and you can learn from absolutely nothing on a racing boat, because they need many hands to grind winches. I spent, I don't know how many years, but several years racing monohulls up and down the east coast of Australia and doing Sydney to Hobart races, which is very extreme sailing. So that was great learning experience for me. The other way to get trips on boats is to get onto those online websites that are like Crew Seekers or Crewing for Boats, and there's 2 or 3 of them. The skippers will put up positions vacant. Yeah, we're sailing from here to there, so you can put up your personal details on that.
So that's advice from one who knows.
The other thing is the investigation for the cause of the fire on Ultradash. It hasn't progressed at all. The boat is still wrapped up in plastic, and they are trying to organise with all the different parties involved that they can all investigate or all attend the site together.
Apparently it's a pretty big deal, so when you're dealing with something of this magnitude, everybody's got to get involved.
Yeah, all the insurance parties from the involved sides have to be there, so this is taking a lot of coordination.
Yeah. What you can know from us is that we're getting back on that horse that kicked us. We're getting back in the saddle, and we're making plans for the future. So I know a lot of you have been asking what we're doing and hoping that our dream continues. So at this point, that's the plan.
Yeah. So that's all from this week, guys. We'll see you again next week. We'll bring you another exciting episode. But please like, subscribe, and ding the dong so you can be notified of our upcoming adventures. All the best, guys.
Bye.
See you later.
If you have liked this episode, hit the like button, subscribe for free, and ding the dong so you don't miss your fix of the next exciting episode. Love and health from the Barefoot Doctors.
Like, subscribe, and hit the dong. Okay.
Ding the dong. It's ding the dong. You get one job.